Chapter 175 to 180. The fact that Watanabe is dead is hard to change. Even if Kuroto controls Watanabe's corpse with the Tenseigan soul descend or with the puppet technique, it would still be impossible to fool the Kumo delegation members, as they might have arranged a secret code for the identification, which is something Kuroto doesn't know. Therefore, Kuroto gave up that plan. After all, Kumo ninjas aren't idiots, given that there are countless methods to manipulate the dead in the shinobi world, therefore they too can figure out that the corpse is being controlled, so instead of wasting time taking such a huge risk, it is better to divert the most blame towards a third party and resolve the contradiction between Konoha and Kumo with a need of forced cooperation irrespective of their choice. Anyway, as long as Watanabe didn't die in the Hyuga grounds and the person responsible for his death wasn't a Konoha shinobi, Kumo's conspiracy would be a failure. When he heard the mysterious person mention the bounty on Watanabe's head, Kumo Jonan's heart tightened. The Umbu squad captain on the side shouted furiously, "Damn it, you bastard, dare to sneak into Konoha." The leader of Kumo envoys was killed in Konoha. Even if the deed wasn't done by a Konoha shinobi, Konoha still has to be somewhat responsible for Watanabe's death, and now that Watanabe's death has been confirmed at the hands of a bounty hunter, the Umbu squad captain's heart was filled with indignation. Looking at those fierce eyes under the Hakumbu mask, Suijin lips curved and said playfully, "Who told a Wagakure to put such high bounty on his head? If you want to complain, do it to the Tsuchikage." As soon as Suijin said this, Kumo ninjas gritted their teeth in anger. Iwagakure. Kumo's hatred towards IWA is completely unmasked. After all, Kumo was betrayed by IWA, as a result of which the Sandaime Reikage died in the hands of 10,000 IWA shinobi. The Umbu squad leader didn't hesitate anymore. What he cared about now was to kill the mysterious man and recapture Watanabe's body. The leader of the Kumo peace delegation was killed in Konoha once this news is spread out. Although Konoha's reputation would be affected, this kind of thing is still inevitable given the situation, but if even the culprit responsible is not killed and the corpse isn't recovered, then Konoha would completely lose its face. Therefore, the Umbu squad leader silently signaled his colleague through routine gestures in order to kill the target. Immediately, the two Umbu used the body flicker technique and rushed towards Suijin from both sides. Suijin just smiled lightly as he could easily make out every attack because he has already activated his Byakugan long ago. At the same time, the Umbu squad leader with the Hakumbu mask threw 7 kunai in a series. If one was to observe very carefully, he would be able to notice that each of the kunai was tied with a specially treated metal wire. These metal wire not only have a very high tensile strength but also doesn't reflect any light, making it very difficult for any normal shinobi to find them. Oh, so they are using formation 324 AZ12. Suijin is also an Umbu, therefore, he knows almost all these sets of coordinated attack formations. After all, he too has practiced these attack formations many times, while conducting Umbu training, so he also knows how to break through them. Suijin instantly threw several shurikens that accurately hit the incoming kunai while he simultaneously used the body flicker technique to meet the incoming attack of the Umbu coming from the right. The Umbu on the right was wielding a sword and waved it harshly. This attack is just a feint, the purpose of which is to force Suijin back to his original place, i.e., the siege circle. Suijin chuckled lightly, and neither did he backed off nor dodged or hide or met the attack, just accelerated further. The Umbu who waved his sword was surprised. After all, who would rush straight towards an oncoming sword slash? But before he could recover and make a follow-up offensive, bang, he flew out with a muffled sound by being heavily punched on the cheek that even broke the panda Umbu mask he wore, knocking him out in just one blow. With the panda knocked out, Suijin didn't stay there any longer and used the inertia of momentum that his body was in and directly exerted force on his toes and made a big jump to make a leap out of the encirclement and ran towards Konoha outer wall. While all this happened in a very short moment, the Hakumbu's face under the mask sank after again instructing his subordinates to call for reinforcements and pass on the latest news to Hokage-sama. He hurriedly took the other colleagues and chased after Suijin. The other party was able to break through the Konoha Umbu's collective attack formation as if it was a piece of cake. This shows that either the other party is very familiar with the Umbu formations or is an exceptionally strong shinobi. In either of the case, he can't be allowed to live anymore. By now the situation is already far beyond what an Umbu squad leader can handle. He could only report the latest news to the Sandaime-sama and wait for the reinforcements from the village. Escaping out of the Umbu siege circle, Suijin came near the outer wall after some ups and downs. Ho! The guards on duty immediately spotted Suijin and identified him as a suspicious individual based on the outfit he was wearing. The shinobi team responsible for guarding this section of the outer wall is also a 4-man team, consisting of 2 chunin and 2 genins. But what Suijin didn't expect was that of the 2 chunin, one turned out to be Hyuga Yui, his fiancée. Recognizing her, he couldn't help think silently, what should I do now? Yui didn't recognize the identity of the mysterious person, immediately took on the gentle fist stance, and asked in a clear voice while the meridians around her eyes bulged, "Who are you?" Suijin didn't answer but thought to himself, can't let her get involved in this. In the first place, Yui is responsible for the internal Hyuga matters, so she shouldn't even be present here. Although Suijin was thinking this, that didn't stop his movements, and within a few moments, he appeared near the two genins and knocked them out cold with furious fist strikes in the gut, then immediately went towards the other chunin and knocked him out cold similarly. In just a few short moments, the three other ninjas were lying unconscious. Yui was shocked at the speed and strength the suspicious person displayed here and immediately rushed towards him. As a member of the Hyuga clan, Yui is naturally very apt in gentle fist-style taijutsu, so she tried to stall the other party. But unfortunately for her, the person she was up against was much more experienced and had much more knowledge of the Hyuga-style combat, not to mention he was much stronger compared to her, therefore all the strikes she made were either dodged or countered with minimal movements. As the battle progressed, her breathing started to get rugged. Taking this opportunity, Suijin immediately hit her abdomen with a palm strike, although Yui managed to bring her palm to greet the attack. However, the strength used by Suijin in that attack was much more than she initially estimated, so was sent flying. With a bang, she used the tree to stop herself and looked at Suijin with more caution. Suijin knew this much wasn't enough to make her give up, but he can't be too hard on her. So without waiting for her to rush towards him, he flickered before her and tapped at the back part of her neck with his hand, knocking her unconscious. Suddenly losing consciousness, Yui fell forward and landed on Suijin's shoulder, out cold. Picking her up lightly, Suijin gently laid her on the ground with her back resting on the tree trunk and muttered slowly, "Please forgive me, Yui, if I hadn't done that, you wouldn't have given up." Being done with that, he glanced at the increasingly noisy village and then jumped past the Konoha outer wall without looking back and moved outside the village. At the bottom of his heart, he has already made up his mind, after this matter was over, he has to find a way to increase Yui's strength. Although Yui has an innocent and kind nature, the shinobi world is very cruel and doesn't care about innocent and kind people. Yui has the potential to reach the elite jonin level, but this isn't enough, her strength has to be much higher. While Suijin was still thinking about Yui's matters, suddenly two figures stopped in front of him. Both of them were dressed in Konoha's umbu gear, and Suijin was incredibly familiar with the two of them as they both were none other than the dog and monkey of the Team 11 he is part of. Hatake Kakashi wearing the dog mask took a closer look at the other party wearing a mysterious outfit and said coldly, "It's time you stop running, you won't be going any further from here." Mike Guy, wearing the monkey mask also said loudly, "You who wants to ruin the hard-won peace between the two nations, I will never allow you to extinguish the flames of youth of Konoha's future." With a depressed mood, Shursui wearing his cat umbu mask led the shadow clone that changed into the appearance of Hyuga Kuroto's eagle umbu guys and quietly returned to the mansion where the Kumo delegation was officially staying at. Currently, only 2 Kumo ninjas were left here while the rest followed Kumo's jonin searching for Watanabe. Sigh, I was a step late. Cat frowned noticing that both dog and monkey were no longer in their position, implying that they too went in search for Watanabe. Since it was a team task, and considering that the mansion Kumo envoys were staying in is pretty large, so Team 11 was divided into 2 teams, with Eagle and Cat in one team and Dog and Monkey in the other. And since both Dog and Monkey are now gone, it could only mean that they went to search for Watanabe. Shaking his head helplessly, Cat sighed, "I hope Kuroto-san wouldn't be blocked by the Captain Kakashi and Gai-san." In the forest beyond the outer wall of Konohagakure, Suijin, who was stopped by Dog and Monkey umbu, folded his hands over his chest and chuckled, "You two, are you really confident that just the two of you can stop me?" Being provoked by Suijin's words, Monkey couldn't stomach his desire to fight. "Calm down." But before he could move, Dog blocked him halfway while his eyes remained on Suijin. The dog didn't rush to start the battle but first asked tentatively, "Who are you and why to kill Kumo's head ninja?" Doesn't Konohagakure claims to be the strongest of the 5 great shinobi villages, so figure it out and find the details about me yourself. Dog wanted to speak something but was interrupted midway by Suijin, who spoke after a pause with a soft chuckle, "You know it is useless to stall time and wait for the reinforcements to arrive, because the result isn't going to change any better." When Suijin said that, Dog didn't wait anymore and immediately started printing hand seals and shouted, "Earth release, multiple collapsing earth-style walls." Boom! Instantly, Suijin was surrounded by walls from the 4 sides. The walls kept coming closer as if they intended to trap and kill Suijin within it. With the enemy sight blocked, Dog again printed hand seals in coordination with the previous ones: snake, ram, monkey, boar, horse, tiger, fire release, great fireball technique. The fierce great fireball technique spurted by Dog shot towards the sky above the 4 earth walls. With the speed at which Dog printed the hand seal, there was almost no break between the two ninjutsu. The intention of releasing the Great Fireball technique were naturally so that the moment the enemy tries to escape out of the siege of the collapsing 4 Earth-style walls, he would be burned to a crisp by the blazing hot fireball. But unfortunately for Dog, Suijin has the Byakugan, so at the moment, Suijin was able to understand Dog's plan based on the hand seals and chakra flow. Therefore, he didn't make any attempt to jump upwards due to escape out of the siege of the collapsing walls. Instead, he made the hand seals at the same time as Dog and shouted in low voice. Water release, water severing wave. Splash. A thin high-speed jet of water was sprayed out of Suijin's mouth and like a sharp knife, it easily cut through all the collapsing walls and small boulders. At this moment, the sound of flicker echoed, and instantly Suijin ducked sideways to avoid the incoming kick from Monkey. Boom! The heavy kick Monkey made was avoided by Suijin, and since the kick was avoided, so Monkey rapidly kicked the rock boulders towards Suijin. Between the incoming flying rock boulders towards him, Suijin's figure flickered and flashed across multiple points, dodging the rock pieces. The speed was so fast that it almost left multiple after images behind as he rushed out of the thrashed walls. Suijin didn't choose to entangle with Monkey in close combat. The reason for this is simple: his water clone body is not as proficient in taijutsu that it could compare with Might Guy, whose keenness in close-quarter taijutsu is so high that it's almost inexplicable. Sometimes it makes him wonders whether Might Guy has some special ability that gives him insight comparable to that of a fully matured Sharingan, which is almost unreasonable. With the embedded Sharingan in his left eye, Dog saw that Suijin rushed towards him, and he made no pause as, after just a few hand signs, dazzling lightning flickered with a piercing sound. Chi-Thi-Erp. The sharp sound of thousands of birds singing echoed throughout the forest as Dog also rushed towards Suijin. Almost at the same time, the two figures rushed towards each other, their speed so fast that it seemed that they were teleporting. Drip. After the two figures passed each other, Suijin looked down and found that his arm was lightly rubbed by Dog's Chidori, as a result of which, his sleeve was cut and a light trail of blood dripped down to the ground along the cuff. On the other side, Dog staggered a few footsteps and half-kneeled on the ground as he coughed out blood from his mouth. Monkey noticed that Dog was injured and instantly rushed towards him and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" Dog nodded, but his left hand was still tightly clutched over his abdomen while the right hand had some blood over his fingers. At this time Suijin turned around and looked down at Dog and Monkey and said with an impressed voice, "Unexpectedly, you were able to hurt me." Gritting his teeth, Dog stood up and once again repeated, "I said previously, you won't be able to escape." "Are you sure about that? It looks to me as if you are quite hurt a lot internally. You may try to cover it by putting on a tough guy act, but these water fists are quite damaging," said Suijin as he lifted his hand to show the water present over his hand. Suijin's attack was a bit similar to how Slug Sannin Senju Tsunade's chakra-enhanced power works. However, it's also quite different from her style, as instead of pure chakra that causes overall damage, Suijin uses high-pressure water that revolves around his fist directly inflicts internal injury when using it with conjunction to the Byakugan's prowess. "It doesn't matter, my injury is nothing. With the two of us here, you have no way of getting past us," said Dog as he drew out his kunai and took the fighting stance. "You said it, my friend, this is the way to go. We will not let the likes of you people let the youth of Konoha be wasted. Now it's time for us to go full throttle and show them what Konoha shinobi are capable of," shouted Monkey as he drew out the nunchucks. Looking at the two figures before him who were ready to fight to the death here, Hyuga Kuroto in his Suijin disguise was in a trance and suddenly remembered his ninja academy days. Hyuga Patriarch's mansion, in the Hyuga clan grounds. Hyuga Hayashi was sitting on a zabuton and leisurely sipping tea while he was busy with some thoughts. After hearing about what happened, the shocked Hyuga Hazashi hurried to his brother's mansion and noticed that the elder brother was calmly sitting, sipping on tea and busy in some thoughts. Seeing this, Hazashi was a little relieved and asked hurriedly, "What happened? Why did Kumo delegation search through our clan grounds?" Upon being broken out of his thoughts, Hayashi sighed lightly and said, "Sit down, and have tea first." Hazashi curtly sat down and poured himself some tea and took a sip. But before Hayashi could begin explaining, a shinobi of the Hyuga clan appeared outside the room and said, "Patriarch-sama, I have received the news that the Kumo delegation and leading Umbu Black Ops found a leader in a forest zone near the eastern outer wall. The news states that the Kumo head ninja Watanabe was attacked by a mysterious man." Hayashi nodded and ordered, "Continue investigating." "Yes." With that said, the ninja disappeared. However, Hazashi, who sat on the side, was shocked, since Hayashi had ordered for any information about the event to not be spoken. Nobody dared to explain to Hazashi. Therefore, the younger sibling was clueless and spoke hurriedly. "What? The leader of Kumo delegation was attacked by someone in the village?" Again, before Hayashi could begin explaining, another member of the Hyuga clan appeared outside the room with the latest report. Patriarch, the latest news, chasing Umbu failed to capture the mysterious man, and the other party seemed to have escaped past the outer wall. Alright, continue. Hayashi nodded. Hearing this news, Hayashi sighed in relief and thought silently. Fortunately, Kuroto-kun took care of the matter, otherwise, things would have become very problematic. If the body of Watanabe was to be found within the Hyuga clan territory, then the consequences would have been unimaginable, and the Hyuga clan might have got involved in the disaster. However, Hizashi didn't know the story behind, and he stood up hurriedly and stated, "Damn it, I'll go after him." Hayashi, who had just taken a sip of tea, lifted his cup and stopped Hizashi, and at this time another Hyuga ninja appeared outside the room with the report. Hayashi-sama, Hokage-sama, himself has gone to hunt down the mysterious man responsible for attacking and killing Kumo head ninja. Poof. Hearing this news, the mouthful of tea was spat out in a panic. Uchiha Patriarch Mansion, Uchiha Clan Grounds. Uchiha Fugaku quietly sat by the lake, thinking over some things. At this time, an Uchiha shinobi rushed in and whispered lightly, "Patriarch, we heard that the Kumo delegation leader, Watanabe, was kidnapped and killed by a bounty nin for the high bounty placed on Watanabe's head." He was kidnapped and killed. Fugaku's face turned solemn after listening to the news. After these past few days of attempted trials, the leader of the Kumo delegation finally agreed to meet the Uchiha Fugaku tonight. For that purpose, Fugaku has been patiently waiting for midnight to come, but now he has received such a piece of absurd news. Watanabe was going to utilize this opportunity and send the shadow clone tonight and use this chance to further provoke the internal conflict between the Uchiha clan and Hokage faction. Watanabe never would have thought that the moment his shadow clone sneaked out of the assigned mansion, it was spotted by the pair of Eagle and Kadambu. Fugaku was obviously a bit frustrated and spoke after a little bit of thinking. "Where is Shisui? Wasn't he responsible for protecting the Kumo delegation tonight?" The Uchiha ninja shook his head. "There is no clear information. The situation there has been taken over by other Umbu ninja and Chunin. The process of Watanabe's disappearance is also very strange. There are no signs of fighting near the assigned mansion, which is completely unreasonable." Hearing this, Fugaku also frowned slightly and finally ordered, "Find Shisui and get the details about what happened exactly. I want every detail." "Yes." The Uchiha ninja nodded respectfully and disappeared. At this time, Fugaku looked towards the full moon in the distant sky, his face filled with hesitation and confusion. After some evaluation, Fugaku has confirmed that Uchiha Shisui is leaning on the side of the Hokage faction. For this reason, the Uchiha clan has been continuously failing in their attempt to make a contact with the Kumo delegation. Otherwise, if Shisui was on the side of the Uchiha clan, then using his identity, making a contact with the Kumo delegation was a piece of cake. Shisui's attitude has further strengthened the Uchiha Patriarch's determination to bring Shinichi back to the Uchiha clan. In his plan, once Shinichi comes back to the Uchiha clan, and the Uchiha clan attempts to launch a coup d'etat, then the Konoha Elder Council will no longer trust Shisui and distance him from the Hokage faction. Left with no choice, Shisui would have to come back to the family he belongs to and apologize to all the Uchiha whose trust he has been breaking. For this reason, Fugaku has never confronted Shisui about his intentions, nor has he thought of fighting Shisui. Because for Fugaku, Shisui is not only very precious combat personnel of the Uchiha clan, but the kid is also akin to his nephew, and which parent wouldn't forgive his child if they make a mistake? Therefore, Fugaku is willing to let Shisui understand that only Uchiha clan is where he would truly belong. And Fugaku also knows that once both Shisui and Shinichi return to the Uchiha clan, then with the combined power of 3 Manjikyu Sharingan users, coupled with all the elite Jonin and other top Uchiha combat personnel, the Uchiha clan will be able to completely defeat the Hokage faction and take over the position of the Hokage without any trouble that the Uchiha has desired for so many years. But is that really what he wants? Fugaku is unsure. After all, he too loves his village. If there is a chance, he wouldn't want to take over the position forcefully. Therefore, there is doubt and hesitation in his eyes, and it will only manifest when he is alone. A moment later, Fugaku sensed the presence of another Uchiha ninja rushing towards him, and his face returned back to the usual. The Uchiha ninja arrived with the latest report. "We have discovered that the Sandaime himself took a large number of Umbu ninja to hunt down the bounty nin responsible for killing Kumo head ninja." Fugaku wasn't surprised by this and immediately got up and ordered, "Assemble the Konoha police force with Jonin-level members." The Uchiha ninja was stunned and asked, "Patriarch, are we also going to be involved in the roundup?" Fugaku nodded. "Sandaime himself is going after the bounty nin. This shows that the matter is undoubtedly serious. Our internal conflicts should be put aside for now. If the bounty nin escapes easily, then Konoha's reputation will be affected. Besides, this will also be a good opportunity to make contact with the Kumo ninjas." The Uchiha ninja understood and immediately nodded. "Yes, in that case, I will issue the assembly ordered on behalf of Patriarch." With that said, the ninja disappeared. Using this chance, inquiring from the Kumo delegation whether Shinichi really defected to Kumogakure would also be the best opportunity. New route base. The leftover route ninjas were constantly coming and going, reporting all kinds of information to Shimura Danzo, who sat on his chair. After hearing that the Sandaime himself led the Umbu to hunt down the mysterious bounty nin, Danzo showed a thoughtful look and asked the men next to him, "Have you found out the identity of this mysterious bounty nin?" The root ninjas next to him nodded and passes a copy of a file recording the information about the mysterious bounty nin. From the description of the outfit he was wearing, the party seems to be a bounty nin that goes by the name of Suijin, who has recently amassed quite a bit of fame in the black market circle for his efficiency and strength and perfection of completing the tasks. Suijin. Shimura Danzo frowned when he looked at the copy in his hands. After a brief glance, he threw the file heavily on the ground and shouted in anger, "You collected this information?" In addition to the brief description of the outfit he wears, and his name, the information only stated that he is a top-tier bounty nin. Besides these three details, there was no other useful information. Seeing Danzo's anger, the root ninja immediately knelt on one knee and hurriedly explained in panic, "Please forgive me Danzo-sama, but this Suijin character appeared out of thin air. Prior to this, there is no information about him in any of our data files, therefore, we couldn't find any information." Incompetence! Scolded Danzo heavily. The root ninja stayed silent and dared not lift his head, afraid that he would only anger Danzo-sama more. After a little while, Danzo calmed himself and went on to say, "Continue investigation. I want to know who is hidden behind that mask. The other party has the gall to enter my Konoha so unscrupulously and cause such chaos. I want to know who gave him such courage. Find out everything about him, from his identity to his background, the person he working for, family, his strength, weakness, secret, anything to everything we can exploit. Is that understood?" Hi, crystal clear, Danzo-sama. The Umbu hurriedly nodded and disappeared. With the room silent, Danzo stood up and looked outside the window at the full moon with an inexplicable expression. In the forest outside the eastern outer wall of Konoha, Suijin glanced at Dog's right hand and then his gaze moved towards the bloodstain on the ground. In the previous confrontation, Dog's chidori slightly rubbed through Suijin's right arm, therefore, a small cut appeared on his arm that leaked out a trail of blood. Although it's not something to get worried over, it's still a bit troublesome if not dealt with quickly. After all, as long as these few drops of blood are dealt with, Suijin can avoid being tracked and pursued because of the odor. This is something to be heavily guarded when facing the dog-masked Umbu, i.e. Hatake Kakashi. After all, he has a highly apt group of 8 Nin-ken as his summon beasts. Moreover, Hatake Kakashi's own sense of smell is also extremely terrifying, therefore, one has to be careful against him. After making up his mind, Suijin quickly printed the seals and muttered, "Water release, water colliding wave." Instantly, a large amount of water formed a surging vortex around Suijin that kept rising upwards and exploded from the top in the form of a massive wave covering the entire battlefield. The momentum of the wave was so high that it seemed to almost submerge the entire surrounding forest area. Dog Umbu's face behind the mask was inexplicable and he hurriedly shouted towards his companion, "Be careful." The monkey responded with a nod, "Yeah." The two tacitly jumped up at the same time, but they didn't look away from the body of Suijin, continuously paying attention to his moves. The water colliding wave washed up the ground and increased the moisture content in the surroundings. With that, Suijin again printed hand seals and shouted, "Water release, multiple water dragon bullet technique." 3 water dragons with their diameter over a meter, condensed from the surrounding water and instantly rose up hovering around Suijin, providing a protective cover. Suijin waved his hand towards the dog and monkey Umbu on the tree, and the 2 of the 3 large dragons immediately rushed towards the 2 Umbu. The dog Umbu didn't dare to be careless and immediately printed hand seals. Water release, water dragon bullet technique. Instantly, a water dragon was also raised by dog Umbu using the surrounding water, and the water dragon collided with the opposite water dragon, protecting the dog Umbu. The monkey Umbu was also not careless and continuously dodged the homing water dragon. Seeing that the water dragon didn't give up the chase, the monkey Umbu kicked the trunk of a tree with all his power, breaking it in one shot, and then again kicked away the broken trunk towards the incoming water dragon, neutralizing the attack. However, this short opportunity in which the dog Umbu and the monkey Umbu backed away was not wasted by Suijin, who exploded the 3rd water dragon, obscuring the 2 Umbu's sight, and immediately turned around and flew towards the depth of the forest. At this time, the dog Umbu's voice came from behind. Summoning, Earth Release, Tracking Fong Technique. Puff. 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 Instantly, 8 pits appeared on the ground around Suijin. The 8 Ninken jumped out of the ground and pounced on Suijin from all sides. Seeing the 8 Ninken biting him from all sides, Suijin was a bit speechless. For some reason, Suijin was inexplicably calm about being bitten by these Ninken, as if he wasn't at all surprised by the sudden turn of events, but as far as the matter was concerned, did he really expect for such a thing to happen? At this moment, Monkey Umbu rushed over, Leaf Great Whirlwind. Just as Monkey Umbu was about to attack Suijin, the 8 Ninken hurriedly jumped back to avoid being swept over by the attack. Being free for movement, Suijin barely avoided the taijutsu kick attack with a backflip, but he wasn't so lucky as the follow-up taken by the Dog Umbu in the form of Leaf Strong Whirlwind still hit him. As a result of the spinning reverse kick, Suijin's body exploded into the water, shocking everyone at the sight, and not even a second later, another Suijin emerged from the water and punched the Dog Umbu in the gut with water-flowing fist that sent him flying away and crashing into a tree, severely breaking it. But Suijin wasn't any lucky either, as the Monkey Umbu, who has just landed over, again pounced at him with more strength, as the green aura of the Hashiman Tonka radiated around him like a fire. Violent, Leaf Adamantine Strength Whirlwind. Suijin didn't have enough time to dodge and could barely resist the roundhouse kick with his hands, but that wasn't enough, as he was also sent flying and crashed several trees, breaking them all. Cough cough. Cough cough. Both Dog Umbu and Suijin spurted out blood from their mouths as they made all their attempt to stand up again. Both of them recovered almost at the same time and stood up while wiping away the blood. At this moment, Suijin was surrounded from the 3 sides, with the Dog Mask Umbu on the left, the 8 Ninken on the right, and the Monkey Mask Umbu on the front. The 2 Umbu and the 8 Ninken were ready to continue the next wave of offensive. Seeing this scene, Suijin thought to himself, the 8 Ninken have already smelled my odor, so using the usual methods of escaping can't be used to get rid of the pursuit of Kakashi and Guy. However, he didn't have time to consider anything as his expression turned serious. Because at this moment, Suijin noticed several chakra signs emerge in Byakugan's vision. This implied that a large number of ninjas were rushing here. Damn, are all the elites coming here? In a flash, Suijin reached this conclusion. Because the insight of the water nature clone's Byakugan is not as high as that of the main body, therefore, by the time Suijin noticed their presence, they were already here. Whoosh. 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 Amidst the sound of breaking through the wind, a series of silhouettes using the body flicker technique appeared around Suijin, surrounding him at the center. The one leading them was none other than the Sandaime Hokage of Konoha in his black combat gear, Sarutobi Hiruzen. Sandaime took a glance around the battlefield and then nodded towards the 2 Umbu. You both did well. The Umbu with the dog mask appeared at the side of Sandaime and said courteously, the strength of the enemy is very strong, and he mostly relies on water style combined with a good level of taijutsu. Sandaime nodded slightly and then turned towards Suijin with eagle-sharp eyes, as he spoke in a deep voice, say, who instructed you to kill the leader of the Kumo delegation? The Umbu elites, as well as the Kumo ninjas that also arrived at the same time at the battlefield, stared at Suijin closely, waiting for his answer. Suijin just shrugged. Of course, it was the 50 million Ryo bounty on the head of Watanabe that arose my interest. I hope this answer satisfies the Honorable Sandaime Hokage-sama. The last part was said with a bit of a mocking tone which didn't escape the eyes of all those present here. I see, in that case, you will have to face the consequences of your actions. For attacking and killing a guest of Konoha, you will be judged with death. Resistance is futile, surrendering will let you earn a peaceful death, said Sandaime indifferently. The surrounding Umbu elites were very eager to fight the enemy. Everyone knows that this bounty nin was doomed. Who could escape alive when facing the Sandaime Hokage? After all, Sarutobi Hiruzen is not entitled to the epithet God of Shinobi for nothing. However, Kumo Jonin frowned. He has a feeling that something has been amiss in the situation, but he hasn't been able to figure out what that is. Contrary to what most expected, Suijin put one hand on his waist and said with a leisure smile, I didn't expect that even the Hokage Dano will personally come here. I am afraid I am shaking down to my boots. Really? I, however, cannot see any trace of fear from the calmness that you exude, Sandaime said with a solemn face. Heh, that's because you have no way of stopping me, said Suijin with a smirk as he started printing hand seals, and shouted, Ice Release Secret Technique, Straight Demonic Mirroring Ice Crystals. With an icy chill, the moisture present in the air condensed into a crystal-clear ice mirror before everyone. What? Ice Release Kekiai Genkai. Everyone, including the Sandaime Hokage, was shocked when they saw the ice mirrors floating in the air. It stands to reason that the Yuki clan has been annihilated by the Kirigakure, therefore, Ice Release Kekkai Genkai should have disappeared from the face of the shinobi world, but unexpectedly, the mysterious bounty nin could use the ice release. Does that mean he is one of the survivors of the Yuki clan? Seeing this scene, the Kumo Jonin was also finally convinced that the death of Watanabe should have nothing to do with Konoha. While he was hateful towards the mysterious bounty nin, Black Market Circle, and most of all towards the Iwagakure for placing such a bounty on Watanabe's head, he was more regretful that their plan to make Konoha suffer an internal strife using Watanabe's death was now useless because of the intervention of a freaking bounty nin. Although Konoha would still be held responsible, they wouldn't be much accountable or under pressure as they might have been if Watanabe would have died at the hands of the Hyuga Patriarch. Experienced shinobi who have had a previous encounter with the shinobi of the Yuki clan will find that the ice mirrors used by this mysterious bounty nin are quite different from the normal ones used by the Yuki clan. The demonic mirroring ice crystals generally form in a circular perimeter, forming a hemispherical ice cover, covering a circular area, and trapping the enemy in it. However, the ice crystals formed by Suijin were different as they lined up one after the other in the midair, forming a long queue that extended down to the horizon. Taking advantage of everyone's stupor, Suijin leaped lightly, merged into the ice mirror, and waved back enthusiastically, "Everyone, goodbye, until we meet again." As soon as the voice fell, the ice mirrors that hung at the last burst with cold air. The mirrors at the end would dissipate into the cold air and will be reshaped at the beginning of the long queue. This process continued like a non-ending cycle. And Suijin, who has merged into the ice mirrors, flashed from one mirror to the other at a frightening speed that was difficult to match. Looking from a distance, this queue of the ice mirror appeared as if it is a speeding train. No one expected the bounty nin in front of them to use such a method, and it undoubtedly left everyone stunned. Sandaime was the fastest to recover and took the lead in using the body flicker technique to try to catch up to him. Sandaime's actions were like a signal, and the large number of Konoha Umbu immediately recovered from their stupor and followed after him. The dog and monkey mask Umbu were obviously no exception to this. And since Watanabe's corpse was in the hands of the bounty nin, therefore, Kumo ninjas also had no choice but to follow, as they can't show any signs that might allow the discerning eyes to figure out anything they don't want to. While following Sandaime, the monkey asked the dog, "How come Eagle and Cat haven't come here for so long?" The dog was also somewhat confused. After all, usually, once an accident occurs during a mission, Eagle and Cat are the ones to react the fastest, but now that such a big deal happened tonight, and either of them has yet to show up. Monkey asked again, "That person obviously had the ice release Kekkai Genkai, why didn't he use ice style when fighting us?" The dog said after a little bit of thinking, "The most likely reason is that he didn't need to. From the way he fought against the two of us at the same time and still had time in his hands, his strength should be higher than what we expect, therefore, we should be more careful of him now." Monkey looked at the back of Sandaime at the front of the team and said with laughter, "Hokage-sama himself is present here. There is nothing for us to worry about." In the quiet night, a long curtain of light illuminated by the full moon in the sky flew over the dense forest, making the entire sky dreamy and illusory, giving off a surreal feeling, if not for a large number of shinobi in the dark gear chasing after the curtain of light that gave off a chill and cold air. Upon closer look, one can find that the light curtain leaping over the forest was in fact a long queue of ice mirrors that made the surrounding forest extremely cold. And the moonlight from the full moon was responsible for giving this queue of ice mirrors a fairy tale vibe. This queue of moving ice mirrors was obviously the Suijin-specific, ice release secret technique, straight demonic mirroring ice crystals. After months of practice and training, Suijin has finally able to fuse the water nature chakra and wind nature chakra and finally mastered the ice release Kekkai Genkai. Of course, the main reason why he managed to do so is the Tenseigan soul descent technique. If not for that, Kuroto wouldn't have been able to personally experience the entire process of using the ice release, so learning ice release was majorly thanks to the Tenseigan technique. After finally attaining the fusion of water release and wind release into ice release, he spent a lot of time and effort studying the mechanisms of the various ice release jutsu over the course of the past few months. The last lesson from losing the water clone made him understand that, it doesn't matter if he can't beat the enemy, what's important is that he must always have an escape in every situation. If he can't escape, then all the effort will be worthless. Why did Namikaze Minato, who grew up later, overwhelm the momentum of the three Sannin, and attained the position of the Hokage? The reason is very simple. All his strengths, knowledge, weakness, character, charisma, loyalty, and talent aside, it was majorly because of the Flying Thunder God technique. This technique was thoroughly mastered by him and it gave him control of the entire battlefield. When to fight, where to fight, who to fight, the option of retreat and everything was in the hands of Yondaime. He had the final say, making him someone capable of even being able to kill 1,000 shinobi alone without suffering any damage. In the Third Shinobi War, in any of the battlefield, if Konoha had a disadvantage, Namake's Minato had the power to turn that disadvantageous situation into an advantageous one. If the situation was already advantageous, then he could expand that advantage infinitely. The main reason for all this was his mobility. Therefore, after mastering the ice release, Kuroto didn't focus on learning or creating the strongest offensive ice release techniques that would give him more firepower. No, he spent more effort in learning descent ice release techniques that would increase his mobility. In the last battle against Sasori, Sasori's ice release puppet used the ice release technique to make a path and smoothly moved on that track and therefore, easily caught up with him. Although this type of use of ice release can also increase a ninja's mobility, the user would still be restricted by the terrain, as treading on a complex terrain with the same mobility could be a bit difficult. And among the enemy he faced up to now or might be facing in the future, Obito has the ultimate technique Kamui, granting him as much mobility as he needs. Zetsu can travel through the earth, Pain can summon and unsummon himself, Konan can fly and hide using her paper style, Kakuzu can also fly to a certain extent using the thread monsters. There will be Deidara in the future who might also join the Akatsuki, he can fly using his art. So the mere ice track can't keep up with the likes of S-class shinobi, therefore, Suijin needed another technique. His Yama form can use the Tenseigan chakra mode to hover and fly, Hyuga Kuroto form can use the Ryumyaku chakra mode that he has been trying to master, to fly. So, how can the Suijin form be left without a unique technique that would grant him high mobility? Therefore, he developed a new variant of the demonic mirroring ice crystals, changing it from a certain kill technique to a technique granting Suijin very high mobility. And the result was very good, exceeded what he initially expected. Not only did it give Suijin enough mobility, which is akin to flying, but the ice mirrors also grants him high protection against other techniques, as breaking the ice mirrors is not an easy feat. Unless someone can destroy all the ice mirrors at once, it will be difficult to inflict any damage upon him, as he could just transfer himself from the fragments to the other mirror as they continuously form. The only drawback of this technique is that the chakra consumption is very high. If this technique is maintained for a very long time, it would cause a serious burden on the user. But that's not a trouble for me. After all, the ice affinity of the water clone bee body is very high, and adding the Ryumyaku chakra that he has access to, even such a large volume of chakra consumption is not a big deal for him, making it a cheat ability that is difficult to match. Sandaime, who was unable to catch up with the disappearing sight of the bounty Nin, had a gloomy face. As the Hokage, Hiruzen has to consider much more than any average Konoha shinobi. Tonight's events must be dealt with extreme caution, otherwise, it would again lead to more trouble for Konoha. The biggest doubt at the moment was, how did he get inside the village without alerting anyone? He couldn't have used this similar ice technique to sneak inside Konoha, as that would have alerted the barrier. The other question is whether his purpose is really the bounty on Watanabe's head, as he says, or something else, because something leads me to believe that's not the entire story. And the final question is, where did he fight and kill Watanabe, or better yet, how did he get past Team 11? Sandaime's mind was filled with so many questions. From the report he has received up to now, there were no signs of fighting in and around the mansion where the Kumo delegation was staying, which means Watanabe wasn't attacked there. This also shows that Watanabe, who should have stayed at the assigned mansion, somehow managed to sneak out of there, getting past the Umbu, and there are also no signs of the presence of Cat and Eagle. All these signs indicate that Kumo undoubtedly had some shady plans. I can only hope that it had nothing to do with the Uchiha clan. Hiruzen is also worried whether Uchiha clan and Kumo would collide together to deal with Konoha. Although he knows that Uchiha Fugaku wouldn't do something so foolish, he still can't help but worry, because if such a thing happened then Konoha would disappear. Shaking his head helplessly, Sandaime decided to put away these thoughts for now, and focus on the enemy at hand. Looking at his back, he was able to see that chasing at such a fast pace for so long is undoubtedly a burden for the shinobi following him. Only the elites have managed to keep up, while the newcomers that have only recently joined the Umbu department have been left behind. The same is also the case with the Kumo ninjas, since most of them are Chunin and Genin, therefore, they were all left behind, and only the Jonin closely followed at the end of the team. Frowning his brows, a trace of helplessness appeared on the aging face of Sarutobi Hiruzen, but that helplessness was soon replaced by a resolute look. He is the current Hokage. As the Konoha's Hokage, he must not show any weakness and set an example for the rest, otherwise, would only lower the morale of his followers. He can't have his shinobi lose their faith in his strength. With that resolute look, Sandaime muttered, "Can't drag any longer." Biting his finger, Hiruzen performed the hand seals and shouted, "Ninpu, Kuchios. Appear! Monkey God King Enma." Puff. With a puff of white smoke out came the Monkey God King, Enma. After a few ups and downs, the sturdy ape caught up with Sandaime, who didn't stop for even a second, and asked, "Sarutobi, who is the opponent?" Sandaime pointed at the queue of ice mirrors in the air and said, "The enemy is hidden within those ice mirrors. He can't be allowed to escape. Transform into the adamantine staff." Transformation, adamantine staff. The Monkey King nodded and immediately shouted, transformation, adamantine staff. With another puff of white smoke, the Monkey King disappeared. Almost at the same time Enma performed the transformation technique, Sandaime leaped high in the sky. It was as if he flew up momentarily. When the body of Sarutobi Hiruzen was midair, the adamantine staff elongated rapidly as it penetrated the white smoke, reached the feet of Sandaime, and extended further at the lightning speed. The speed of elongation was far beyond the imagination of anyone, and in just a few breaths, Sandaime caught up with the flying queue of the ice mirrors. Is that also how it works? Suijin saw that Sandaime used the adamantine staff and almost caught up with him, and he was taken aback. Without waiting for Suijin to recover, Sandaime, who was just behind the ice mirrors, printed some hand seals at a fast pace, took a deep breath, his chest bulging to the limit, and then shouted. Fire release, fire dragon flame bullet. Whoosh. The moment Sandaime spit out the hot billowing fire jutsu, the red-hot bellowing fire swallowed the long line of ice mirrors floating in the air. However, Suijin had already reacted before. The moment Sandaime's seals were completed, he had already used the water clone technique and his Suijin body had already escaped under the fluorescent cover of the demonic mirroring ice crystals in the moonlight. Therefore, although the ice mirrors were damaged, because the jutsu used by Sandaime was very powerful even though it is just a B-class fire jutsu, Suijin still wasn't swallowed by the flames. Gently landing on a tree in the forest, Suijin raised his head to see the flames that illuminated the dark forest with orange translucent light and muttered, "The old bones have not deteriorated yet." Sandaime also landed on a big tree on the opposite side not far away, holding the shrunken adamantine staff, and stared coldly at Suijin. Seeing the cold look he was getting, Suijin chuckled, "Hokage-sama is really very experienced. Surprisingly, he forced me to come out of the ice mirrors. It appears that you still haven't gotten old, huh, Sarutobi Hiruzen Dano?" Sandaime coldly glared at Suijin and said, "You dare to enter my Konoha and cause such chaos. No matter your identity and affiliation, you will not escape today." Looking at the murderous intent of Sandaime, Suijin smirked and decided to play with him for a bit. "Don't be so sure, Sarutobi Hiruzen, the person responsible for the Kyuubi's chaos and the death of Konohagakure's beloved Yondaime Hokage and his wife is still on the loose. Your words don't hold much weight." "What, you are?" Before Sarutobi could ask anything, Sajin interrupted him, "Ha ha ha, does that shock you? You want to know more about it, don't you? Too bad, Hokage, 'cause I ain't giving out anymore." Frankly speaking, Kuroto has never liked Sandaime Hokage. Sarutobi Hiruzen is unworthy of the epithet, God of Shinobi. After all, his strength is too weak compared to Shodaime-sama. How many people are capable of defeating Senju Hashirama in the history of the shinobi world, even if the Otsutsuki of the mythical era are taken into account? The answer may not be clear, but one thing is clear, it is that Sarutobi Hiruzen is not among them. Not to mention, Sandaime acts like an amiable old grandpa, but in actuality, he is a hypocritical old coot, who just silently let Konoha deteriorate, in the name of his personal kindness. Where was that kindness, when Uzumaki Naruto had to bear the hatred of the entire village? Where was that kindness, when Uchiha Itachi had to bear the burden of killing his entire clan, hatred of the only brother he loved so much, and the fate of death as a rogue nin? Sarutobi Hiruzen isn't kind. If he was, then he couldn't have let such cruelty befall the citizens of his village. He is just an old coot, who is hesitant to get rid of the tumor plaguing and deteriorating Konoha internally because he believes that the tumor is still necessary for the stability of the village. Whether in terms of personal strength or character, he is unworthy of being a Hokage. Calming himself down, Suijin focused at the front, because no matter how weak compared to the Shodaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen is still not someone to be taken lightly. After all, his teacher Orochimaru also suffered so miserably at the hands of Sandaime in the main story, and currently the geezer is a decade younger, not someone Suijin can casually ignore, with the current strength of Suijin body. Just the fire-style jutsu overhead clearly indicates that Sandaime has an immense chakra pool. Coupled with being hailed as the professor because of his proficiency and mastery of all the ninjutsu Konoha has to offer, be that bokujutsu, ninjutsu, taijutsu, fuinjutsu, kinjutsu, juinjutsu, and more. Anyone with a non-overwhelming strength will feel a headache when dealing with him. Thinking of this, Suijin suddenly thought, I don't know when will Shursui arrive? Since he didn't want Sandaime to take the opportunity, so making up his mind, Suijin started printing hand seals, water release, great waterfall technique. Suijin expelled a large volume of water high in the air from his mouth, that cascaded down like a giant waterfall at Sandaime. Sandaime's expression remained unchanged and he easily avoided the attack by leaping back using the adamantine staff. Suijin naturally expected such a thing to happen and didn't expect the Great Waterfall technique to cause any harm to the professor. The only reason he used this technique was that he needed a huge amount of water vapor that would be produced because of the heat left by the previous fire release jutsu used by Sandaime. Without waiting for a moment, Saojin printed the hand seals and stomped heavily on the ground with his right leg. Water release, water formation wall. As soon as his feet landed, a wall of water rose from the ground and shot high. But Suijin wasn't finished yet, as he put his palm against the high-pressure water wall and shouted, "Ice release, ice condensation." Under the action of the ice nature chakra, the high wall of water was instantly frozen into an ice wall. On the other side of the wall, Sandaime stared at Suijin's action with a shocked and doubtful expression. He was really shocked at the volume of the chakra the other party was using in all of his techniques, but he was doubtful as to why would he make an ice wall between the two of them? It couldn't be that he thinks that just a mere wall of ice will give him the opportunity to escape, right? However, without giving him much time to wait, feeling the sudden drop in the temperature because of the cold ice wall, Sandaime looked at the sudden darkened sky that hid the full moon behind a layer of dark clouds. With a thinking expression, Sandaime analyzed, the fire dragon flame bullet I used heated the air too much, the great waterfall technique he used increased the moisture in the surroundings creating hot vapor, and finally the ice wall he used cooled down the rising vapor leading to the formation of rain clouds above us, that will rain at any moment. Oh no. The clouds were blocking the moonlight and Sandaime immediately guessed the intention of the enemy, but it was already too late to stop him. Pitter-patter. Without making them wait too much, it soon began to rain. Suijin hiding on the other side of the ice wall laughed loudly. Will the one entitled as the god of shinobi be able to resist the power of nature? At this time, a lot of the Umbu appeared at the side of Sandaime. Looking at the huge ice wall before them, everyone had a solemn expression. The arrival of the Umbu made Suijin frown and immediately said, "Hokage Dano, I suggest that you better send away these miscellaneous fishes," or, Suijin didn't need to speak any further, as he knew Sarutobi Hiruzen was wise enough to understand what could be the consequences if not. Suijin doesn't want to kill the Umbu ninjas. After all, everything he is doing is to make sure that the damage Konoha suffers is the least, and if he, himself was to kill the Umbu shinobi, then there would be no point in doing everything. Besides, Suijin is already tired of keeping his strength on the same level as Sandaime. He isn't sure whether he would be able to control his strength to the level that he doesn't hurt the Umbu members. Sandaime also knew what it means to fight an ice-style shinobi on a rainy day, and understands that the Umbu wouldn't able to do much in this level of battle, therefore, he told them, "Step back." Some of the Umbu tried to retort. "Hokage-sama, please let us fight him." "Yes, Hokage-sama, it is our duty to protect Konoha from the likes of him. We will not let the will of fire we inherited from our predecessors to be trampled upon, nor will we let some bounty nin disrupt the peace that so many of our own died for." Sandaime shook his head. It truly warms this old man's heart that each of the Konoha shinobi inherits the will of fire in their hearts, but let your Hokage protect you this time. The enemy is not someone to be taken lightly. I do not wish for my people to die before me, therefore, you will all spread around to make sure he doesn't escape, while I will personally deal with him. This is an order. The majestic momentum displayed by Sandaime left everyone in awe, and they subconsciously couldn't refute Hokage-sama's command. All the Umbu members, including the Hokage guards, spread far away in a huge circle, enclosing both Sandaime-sama and Suijin within it. Although everyone was far away, each one was at the battle-ready state. If there was even a single moment where the fight turned against the favor of Sandaime-sama, they wouldn't hesitate to kill the enemy. At this moment, Sandaime turned towards Suijin and said, "I guess I am grateful towards you for not killing any of my shinobi. As a sign of my thanks I will give you a chance to surrender yourself peacefully. You will not be killed, that I can assure you." Suijin shook his head, "Thanks, but no thanks, I am fine as I am." With a sigh, Hiruzen's gaze hardened as he said, "In that case, this old man will finally have to move his old bones to bring you down for disrupting the hard-won peace that so many of my shinobi died to bring. But the question is, can you?" Suijin asked. "You will know soon enough," Sandaime said. "I guess, I will." With that said, Suijin nodded and printed the hand seals. "Be careful Sandaime Hokage Dano." "Humph." Sandaime coldly snorted, while holding the adamantine staff at the back. Suijin completed the hand seals as an icy cold chakra swept the entire battlefield. Ice release, the all-killing rain. The icy cold chakra violently exploded with Suijin at the center, all the raindrops falling from the sky momentarily halted in their path and turned into countless sharp senbons. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/Kaioshin. I tend to polls that decide important plot stuff in my P at Trian. Many thanks to my awesome patrons. Ben Phillips.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.